So, good morning, folks. We're live on the screen, so we can go. It's Friday, March 31st. Boy, I'm glad it's the 31st. April's usually a good month. So we'll call the ag meeting to order. And this morning we're going to talk with nursery and greenhouse people, folks from the ag agency that looks after that. I guess we just wanted to know or get an idea how things are going with our nursery and greenhouse people. If there was anything that that we could do to assist and make that hopefully better. Sometimes we do things that makes it worse, so we don't want to do it that way. But it's a very important part of our ag industry here in the state. And so I don't know just where we want to start, but if Irene, you have.
Why don't we start at the top?
Well, you mean up where it says Senate Committee on that? No, that's a good suggestion. And so, Andrea?
Thanks.
Yes.
Andrea, thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah. So you could
Mr.
sit
Dodson.
over here and then
Got
we can all
Right.
see you. And I don't know how, I've always been on ag. I don't know how other committees do it, but we kind of run a loose meeting. And, if there's questions, people just raise their hand, and committee members, and ask. And if you have questions of us, certainly.
Okay.
You can
Yeah, no,
ask us anything by our age. No.
We've all been around a while.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Not insulting anybody.
So welcome, and it's nice to have you with us this
Thank you.
morning.
Thank you. So, yeah, we are, as nursery growers, people involved in the agriculture, we are pretty flexible and are always interested in learning and sharing ideas. So I did write some stuff out so that I don't ramble on too much.
Introduce yourself first.
Oh, yes, I will. So my name is Andrea Morganti, and I've been working as a landscape contractor and designer in Vermont since 1976, mostly in Chittenden County, and have been fortunate to work with all kinds of professionals, growers, plant people, masonry contractors, and a huge diversity of tradespeople and clients. I've gone from planting and hand digging 5 to 6 inch caliber trees that had to be moved with cranes. And this was before there were the really giant tree spades. We would hand dig them and drum lace them by hand. So if you know how a tree, how a drum is laced up and down, we would spend days taking twine and moving it so that you would hold the root ball together, and then planking it up out of the hole. Anyway, we've come a long way in the nursery business with a lot more mechanical equipment, but an awful lot of it involves getting soil under our fingernails. I worked on commercial projects and residential projects, built and planted window boxes for elderly neighbors. And primarily when I started, there were really no nurseries in Vermont that were growing enough product that we could use on the burgeoning kind of commercial projects, condos at the ski areas and in Chittenden County that were being built. And we would drive to Massachusetts and Connecticut to tag our plants and or bring them back on in a truck, or we'd have tractor trailer loads of plant material delivered until the early to the mid 1980s, when there were quite a few people who had graduated from UVM in the Plant and Soil Science Department, and it was kind of a really encouraging and popular time to try and start a nursery. So quite a few of those folks, I did not go to UVM, but went and worked out of state to get some experience in some bigger nurseries, and then were able to come back and start nurseries here. So we want to thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts today on horticulture, the growing of ornamental and native trees, shrubs, perennials, and bedding plants as part of the diversification of Vermont's agricultural economy. While today there are more plants grown in Vermont, the majority of plants sold in garden centers, hardware stores, and big box stores comes from out of state. We're here today to let you know we think there's a great opportunity to really increase the number of growers, of farmers, people who work the land, and the quantity of trees, shrubs, bedding plants, and perennials grown in Vermont as the agricultural portion of Vermont's economy diversifies. I'm here with other members of the Vermont Nursery and Landscape Association, which is a professional statewide organization formed in 1963 to promote and share horticultural knowledge among growers of bedding plants, perennials, woody shrubs and trees, and landscapers. UVM Extension was instrumental in helping to found the organization, and academic horticultural research and technical support have been critical to the development of hardy plants with plant trials, techniques for overwintering, container growing, and many other facets of the greenhouse and nursery business. We're kind of isolated here in Vermont, and a lot of the techniques in the growing seasons that happen in southern New England have had to be adapted and tried out. And a lot of it is trial and error, and with research projects happening both at the undergraduate and graduate level, when there was an extension ornamental specialist. With support from the Agency of Agriculture, it was called the Vermont Plantmen's Association. Over the years, we've changed to Nursery and Landscape Association. We created the Vermont Certified Horticultural Program that to promote professionalism within the industry and requiring continuing education to stay certified. We believe that it's really important for ourselves to continually be educated by bringing in outside speakers and sharing our knowledge among each other. Sarah and Ralph can talk a little bit more about what we do there. We've also worked on the agency about 30 years ago to develop a marketing campaign called Vermont Grown, which was very popular and really helped when the nurseries were and proliferation of nurseries was getting started, and I think we still would really appreciate being able to utilize that Vermont Grown logo and what it stands for. Most of the general public recognizes that the Vermont Nursery and Landscape Association as the sponsor of the Vermont Flower Show. The most recent show was at the beginning of March at the after a 4-year hiatus due to COVID. It was held at the Champlain Expo in Essex Junction and attracted approximately 13,000 visitors over 3 days. It was packed. We were really fortunate that people planned ahead and thought that Saturday was going to be a bad travel weather day because people come from all over the state and from out of state to our show. It's really unique, and Sarah and Ralph will talk about that.
I saw that on, well, Channel 3
Yep.
News covered it
Yep.
quite a bit.
Yep.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful.
It's a great story about how we put that together. And we offered 38 educational programs over those 3 days on a variety of topics related to horticulture. We had 99 vendors participate, which included the Vermont Specialty Foods and Spirits section, as well as a nonprofit section. So all kinds of growers and nonprofit groups associated with gardening and agriculture. 70 of those 99 were vendors. The vendors were Vermont businesses. As growers and landscapes who deal directly with the public, We believe we play a major role in helping to educate and communicate the importance of agriculture in Vermont's economy and overall our ethic of land and water stewardship that all of us in Vermont are so proud of. Gardening is the #1 hobby in the United States and especially Vermont. Vermonters take unusual pride and attention to our homes and gardens. We as citizens and voters demonstrate our belief in stewardship of the land through land use policies and regulations enacted both at the local and state level. And our collective dedication to agriculture is demonstrated through our support of the land use value tax program, funding land conservation, per capita attendance at farmers markets, membership in CSAs, and numerous other programs that connect residents and tourists with agricultural production. Gardening is the hobby that crosses genders, ages, all abilities, and economic and social categories. It's one of the few topics that we can talk about along with the weather and sports. It's pretty much an okay topic. It provides physical and mental health benefits and creates opportunity for people to connect with nature, whether it's growing plants on a windowsill, in containers, on a porch or deck, a vegetable garden, or creating arboretums or landscapes full of native shrubs and trees to attract birds and other wildlife. It's an activity that connects us with our agricultural past of our ancestors, whether they were farmers here or from other parts of the world. Working on the land, getting soil under our fingernails is an activity that connects us all over time and place, consciously or unconsciously. It's part of what makes us human. We are learning more and more about how to develop relationships with the land, plants, and animals, that we can create landscapes for our homes and public spaces that function as ecosystems and won't require constant addition of fertilizers, pesticides, and weeding. There's an increasing understanding and knowledge and support for how gardening and landscaping can and must play an important role in restoring biodiversity and mitigating the climate crisis. Gardeners, landscapers, and all of us can actually make a difference in helping to create landscapes that support the insects needed to pollinate both cultivated and native trees, shrubs, and flowers, creating shade and trapping moisture to support healthy amphibian populations. These are all underappreciated and acknowledged types of wildlife vital to the ecosystems that ultimately support us all. With increasing interest by homeowners and the millions and millions of public dollars allocated to addressing the legacy of phosphorus and other nutrient pollution of our lakes and rivers, hundreds and thousands of trees and shrubs are needed to implement the projects intended to improve water quality through wetland restoration, stream and lakeshore buffer plantings, and flood resiliency. The need to increase the housing stock will also bring additional infrastructure of roads, parks, and civic buildings that will require trees and shrubs to help create dynamic and vibrant neighborhoods. The planting projects enable Vermonters, both as homeowners, volunteers, and professionals, to these increasingly important activity is the availability of plants, trees, shrubs, and perennials. The vast majority of plants sold in Vermont come from out of state. Restoration projects are being delayed because even nationally, there is an incredible shortage of plant material to replant the miles of rivers and hundreds of acres of land that are slated for restoration. There is a rising demand for all types of plants, especially native plants that can and should be grown and sold in Vermont. There's a great opportunity for increasing the number of farms growing woody plants and trees and greenhouse production. If we look around at our neighboring states that have transitioned over the past 75 years from having land-based economies to a more urban and suburbanized landscape, the diversification of agriculture has included the transition to growing trees, shrubs, bedding plants, and perennials. Nursery and greenhouse growers have become the most dominant part of the agricultural economy in the other 5 New England states. Referencing the USDA state statistics for 2017, Massachusetts nursery and greenhouse growers accounted for $139,740 million and was the largest sector at over a third of the $185 million ag economy in Massachusetts. In New Hampshire, with a population that's a little more than twice that of Vermont, The greenhouse and nursery growers were the largest part of the ag economy, with $53 million generated of their total $188 million. Vermont is clearly still has the largest agricultural economy in New England, with $780 million, of which nursery crops were only 25 million, and which is just 3%. The others are more like a third. For more specific details on the challenges nursery and greenhouse growers face, Ralph Fitzgerald from Horsford Nursery and Sarah Salatino from Full Circle Gardens will share their experiences. In general, the challenge we face as growers are pretty typical of anybody working the land, any of the agricultural producers and farmers, which are labor, cost of land, and figuring out how to deal with climate change. So now I'll turn it over to Ralph.
Thank you. Yeah,
Unless you have
Yeah.
questions.
that was good. Thank you. Morning.
Good morning.
You know, one thing I forgot, we didn't introduce ourselves.
So I'm Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland District.
Irene Renner, Chittenden, Norfolk, live Fairfax.
Brian Campion, Bennington County District. Rich Wesley, Will County District.
Wonderful, thank you.
I'm probably start from before we skip.
So as Andrea mentioned, I'm Ralph Fitzgerald. I am the Vice President of the Vermont Nursery and Landscape Association. I'm also the grower at Horsford Gardens and Nursery. I've been in the industries for 56 years. I basically started right out of college. I basically worked at Horsford's my entire life. It's a family-owned operation, always has been. It fits Vermont ideals. We care about one another, we care about the land, go out of our way to help one another throughout the day and throughout the season. And we are a seasonal business. Our business starts April 15th and we close on Halloween. But that doesn't include the month or so before trying to get open. Like right now, it's 22 degrees outside. I was expecting a phone call this morning saying the water's all froze up because we're still trying to pot plants. I have a digging crew that will start next week, and we have 900 trees to dig mechanically out of the ground. We have a tree spade, and it's a 5-man crew, and we'll dig that. We then have 500 or 600 shrubs that will come out, also be hand dug at that point. So we're still pretty much a hands-on operation. I make the funny is that my most advanced piece of equipment is a nursery spade. You know, and that's what we do a lot of our work with. So
How big a spade do you have?
we have a 32-inch spade and a 44-inch spade. And then we contract with a local, Tree Works right here in Montpelier to come down with their big 90 to dig that 5-6-inch tree that Andrea and I have all dug as we were much younger. And it does the same thing, but it gets quite the, everybody wants to come out and watch big trees get dug out of the ground. And it's an important part of the nursery industry because we have people that have the capability to plant large plant material on their estates or at their home or on a public building. And so it's nice to be able to do that, but it takes a long time to do that. So a lot of these larger nursery, I should say landscapers will go out of state. They'll go to New Jersey, Massachusetts, and they'll bring in that big caliber plant material. So again, it's all how we manage our land and how we move forward because it takes longer to grow up here. Even though with climate change, we're still, we're 2-3 years behind in production. So
90-inch, did you say 90-inch spade? How tall a tree with that?
25 or 30 feet or taller.
Big
It's a big tree, yeah. It's so you've got that part of it, and then you need the crew and equipment to pick it up safely, take it to a job site. Yeah, stand it up, tip it over, put it in the ground, and then, oh yeah, we got to maintain that tree.
Yeah.
It's a 5 or 6 year maintenance process usually because you've left 70-80% of the root mass in the ground. And so you've got to help that tree compensate for that loss. And with extended dry periods that we have right now, how do you do that? And so that's where the technical part comes from. And a lot of that technical education is passed down from myself to the younger people that work at the nursery and landscapers that come in, because the nursery is also a source of information and education for landscapers. We've got landscapers that have been around like Andrea for a long time. And we've got new guys that have started, they started with a pickup truck, a shovel, and a lawnmower. And in 3 or 4 years, they've got people that, oh, can you do this or can you do that? And so they come and ask us, well, what do you guys recommend? And so we're also a big source of information about making sure they plant the right stuff, because we want them to succeed so that, our stuff is in the right spot, looks good. Because a lot of stuff lasts a long time.
So you run an educational program.
We do. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And most anything in agriculture is small, in that, a half a dozen landscapers over here, 10 to 15 up there. And so they become friends and colleagues. And so if you're not treating them fairly, the word gets out. I learned a long time ago that I've got $1 and I have 10 places to spend it. So I spend it with people that treat me well. They may not be the least expensive, but they know who I am. They may ask about my dog, how was hockey season. So, we start these relationships that go beyond. So, yeah. So we'll move towards the flower show here a little bit, because I also on the flower show. I wasn't on the committee that designed it, but I was there as a board member assisting wherever I could. And one of my jobs was I was at the line greeting people coming through. And I have seen that many people a long, long time. And they stood there, and you went up to the area to buy your ticket, and then went around the corner. And you'd see people just they just couldn't wait to get around that corner to see flowers, mulch, little kids bouncing up and down, and this kind of thing. And so, but the problem is it's a $220,000 production. We put it on not knowing how many people would show up. And as Andrea mentioned, that snowstorm.
Yeah.
That was a real moment, but people came, they were enthusiastic. And so more importantly, the expo wants us back. The vendors are already starting to talk about what's the next time. And so because of the size of this show, we can only do it every 2 years. It just costs too much
That's
money.
a big, you had a show there.
We did.
It was beautiful, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I just, so, I'm sorry I missed this. So who sponsors the show? Who pays for that show? It's all of you at your association?
Vermont Nursery and Landscape Association
Okay.
organizes the show.
Okay. And where does most of the money kind of get you guys to the point where you can afford to do it?
From the previous show.
Okay.
So 4 or 5 years ago, we had another record-breaking show, 11,000 people that came through.
Yeah.
And so we used that money to carry us through seed money. And then 2 years ago, we did a fundraising campaign called Grow Without the Show. And our members contributed to the association $5, $10, $500. And that helped carry our administrative costs. We have our executive director is Christine Backlund, who is phenomenal. And that's on an average day. She puts together all this stuff. She guides us. She answers questions. She finds people to help get this show on the road. And then, so once we get these initial contacts signed, we then use vendor income to help to get us going forward. And then
Should mention like the thousands and thousands of dollars of donated plant material that go basically to create the flowering crab apples, the forsythia, the lilacs. All of that is donated by our local nurseries. So that doesn't even count in the 200. We do pay for some of the growers, especially Clausen's, who has been tremendous in allowing us. One of the things that stands out about our show is that it is a cooperative effort as opposed to the Boston or the Philadelphia flower shows, which is competition among the greenhouses and nursery industry. They all set up their own individual booths and recreate a little landscape. We realized 30 years ago that there was no way that us as individuals could do that. And we collaborated, and Chris Conant from Clausen's offered to let us bring the plant material to him, to his greenhouses. And we had to figure out what the timing was, whether it was light or sunlight, artificial lights, or temperature that would trigger these plants to be forced. We knew that forsythia you could basically force anytime, but all these other plants was a learning curve that we all shared because in those other states, those other venues, it was a competition. Who could you attract, and with, you know, the brightest and glitziest looking magnolias that might be flowering.
Well,
So-
there's a big economic development pull, I would think, also for the state. It's huge.
Yes, and
Right.
people come from all over the state and from out of state.
Do you get other growers from other counties coming in, or?
Oh, yeah.
Or we do, but there are not many growers left. You know, we were talking about that. We don't have all the numbers because we don't have a way to track a lot of this stuff. So I know in Addison County, in Chittenden County, we've lost Gardenside Nursery, they've closed up. South 40 is no longer there. Lang Farm, you know, so things move and adjust, you know, but it allows other opportunities. But one more thing I want to mention about the flower show is that we partnered with Habitat for Humanity for as a partner because of we do a thing called Vermont Blooms, where we go out and we do a small project at a library, school, church, park. And they came to us 4 years ago and asked us to do a landscape design for one of their projects. One was in Essex, one's in Milton, one's in South Burlington. And last fall, we did one in Virgins at Booth Woods. And so why not bring in this another group that has also a very large following? And so we shared some proceeds with them, put their booth out in front so other people could learn about what's going on. So trying to be, in today's world, inclusive. And so this is one way to do it. So, but it's 3 days. It start 3 days of a show. But Monday morning, 2 tractor trailer trucks back up and dump 200 yards of mulch. We then put tape on the ground for everything's going to be just when the display starts, and then all these folks start showing up. We show up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning. The doors open and the magic starts. Friday, 6,000 people, 4,000 people. Friday, Saturday, Sunday afternoon, 5 o'clock. It all starts to go away. And by 10:30 Sunday night, the only thing left to be picked up was to sweep the floor, take some rocks out, and put some stuff away. So, yes, and so one thing we're trying to do is figure out, can we expand it? Do we physically have the capacity to maybe go one more day? And how do we do that? So we've got some good things to work over the next couple of years to make it go forward. So we'll see where that leads.
Yeah.
So, you know, having the Vermont, the Ag Department and this committee help promote this will go a long ways.
Yeah.
So, all right. Okay. Industry size. We've talked about a lot of numbers. I've just got a couple here. Plastic containers of nursery stock brought into the state is between $8 and $10 million a year.
Plastic containers, what?
Plant nursery containers of containers is between $8 and $10 million.
You mean from
Outside the state.
so people that
Massachusetts,
are not growers, you're saying?
well, there are other growers, other nurseries, other suppliers. Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, West, and New York State. Those are the closest. So they're bringing in containers by the thousands because we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have, you know, we haven't grown out that industry part of it. And our growing season's a little shorter.
Yeah.
So there's one challenge there.
Is there any way that we could enhance our season or our production of that stuff? Because we wouldn't have to truck it in then, or is the price so competitive that you can't compete?
Those are all things that we need to look closer at. Because, you know, again, it's price point. As Cheryl mentioned here in a little bit, box stores are a big competitor of ours. They already have nursery stock on the ground.
Yeah.
You know, it's already come in, you know, and there are times when, you know, I'll send a customer of ours from Horsford's to there if they're looking for something that we don't grow and maybe it's a little out of our climate zone, you know, go try it, you know, and because they have a variety of stuff. And then, you know, educate that customer of what to look for when they go there. You know, actually pull the plant out of the pot. Look at what's going on the roots, because roots are what's going to support that plant. So again, more education for our growers, our customers. I'm a bare root purchaser. I grow all the stuff I do at Horsford Gardens Nursery, but my main job is to grow trees and shrubs in the ground. So I'm buying my material from Michigan, Minnesota, and Oregon. Oregon in the Willamette Valley grow trees out there like they grow corn in Vermont, acre after acre after acre. And perfect climate for it out there. They do it well, and then they get loaded on a truck, sent east. One of the largest warehouses in the United States is owned by Bailey's Nursery. They can put 40 tractor trailers inside this building at a time of book. So, you know, so again, so we're just this little small piece of this big industry that is tremendous. And then we have finished bulk burlap material that landscapers want to purchase to do a commercial job or a condominium or this kind of thing. So a lot of that is brought in, and it's thousands and thousands of pieces. So yeah, so I mean, I don't expect this industry to stop growing in this part of the world because people are coming to Vermont because they like what they want to see here. People want to redo that landscape. The thing that happened 2, 3, 4 years ago that shut everybody down, COVID, increased the garden industry by 30 to 40%.
Increase.
Increase.
It was something good in COVID.
Yes. So, but as a Horsford Gardens and Nursery, we had to learn how to help these people get their plant material. A lot of people didn't want to talk to you. So we developed, everybody has curbside these days. So the owner of our company is named Charlie Prout, and very intelligent person, worked with a couple other very good people in the office to figure out how to do it. So we now have an online store. So you can go online at live inventory. Oh, I want a 10-gallon fruit tree. You can punch the button, put your credit card in, pay for it. Our other group gets that information. They go pull it, they put it in the curbside, and then I think they send an email or text that it's available for you to come. You could drive down, pick it up. But if it's not what you want, we'll go back and find something else for you. And so that has allowed us to grow, and we didn't know what to expect. So again, like peach trees. You couldn't buy a peach tree in the state of Vermont by July because everybody wanted peach trees. And because of climate change, we now can grow peach trees in the state of Vermont.
So climate change isn't all bad.
No, it's not all bad. No, we have to realize that, and you guys all know, we get huge piles of rain, and then we go through these cycles where we get none, and we get another huge spike of rain. And so the ability to armor our ground with plant material will help to mitigate some of the phosphorus runoff in Lake Champlain, Lake Elmore, Lake Carmine. So, you know, it's all connected. So, yeah. So I've rambled enough. Any other questions?
How many employees have you got?
Right now, Horsford Gardens and Nursery employs between 25 and 30, full-time seasonal. In the winter, we are probably 4. So
That's,
we have to hang on to these people. And one of the conversations we had coming down today was that, Sarah will speak a little more about it, but it's making sure that the unemployment system works, and so that our people can get their they need 10 weeks. And we pay the taxes to support those 10 weeks.
Yeah.
But when they call up and they can't get it, or there's not a clear message, it's pretty frustrating.
yeah,
So-
we're putting millions into a new system so that to alleviate these problems that they're having over there. I don't recall how many, but it's like 30, 40 million dollars for a totally new electronic system over there because I know during COVID, it was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd get phone calls every day.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Starr, I can't get my money and I'm out of money and so I call down and, one at a time, get them straightened out, but I understand where
Yeah.
you're coming
Right.
from. Because you want these people back when
Absolutely.
when April rolls around, you gotta be rolling.
And so, we need to continue to support, somehow to continue to support the Randolph Technical Center. Support, figure out how to get somebody back into extension, how to protect, sustainable ag at UVM, because they have provided very good students, they provided good information, and they've also prevented us from making mistakes. And that is another part of this thing. If we can prevent from making a mistake of growing something or doing something, that just makes us more successful as we go forward.
Well, we certainly appreciate all that you folks do. So we'll,
We got one more to listen to. I'm gonna get out of the hot seat.
yeah. Morning.
Hi, I'm Sarah Salatino, the owner and grower of Full Circle Gardens in Essex. And we're going into our 14th season of growing. And I know probably the question on your mind is, Vermont grown plants, who cares? You can go to a big box store and probably get them for cheaper. But I will tell you why I decided to do Vermont grown, because a plant grown in this climate transplants well to this climate. Rarely, I think twice I've had people bring a plant back and say it didn't make it over the winter. I've had people
From a different spot.
from a different spot, yes. But I've also had people say, I'm gonna get my plants from you, I've learned my lesson. I am competitively priced with the big box stores. But I also know what goes into my plants in terms of fertilizer, time, the type of plant material I'm using. Also, while we do get in plugs, which are trays of 32 to 50 to 72 little tiny plants, we do grow a lot of what we sell by seed and also cuttings. Most of what we offer in plant varieties are native plants. 60% of what we have are Northeast natives, which is a really important type of plant to have these days, especially when you have reports coming out, like what happened last November with, oh my goodness, the Rubenstein Center saying that 55% of Vermont bees are in peril of becoming extinct in our state. So our plants, we grow our plants to provide habitat for pollinators to help increase pollinator habitat. We educate people, our customers, on why it's important to have pollinator plants, and also why Vermont grown is the way to do it. So one of the challenges that I face, before I go there, I also want to say that our business is very Vermonty. We just grow perennials, but we do buy in all our shrubs and trees from Vermont businesses. We buy in our annuals and veggie starts from Vermont businesses. And we do custom grow every year. This is the 5th season for the King's Garden in Fort Ticonderoga. And that garden now has two Vermont growers. Those are the only people that grow the 3,000 4-inch annuals and perennials that are needed to replant in the King's Garden. And those are all annuals and perennials that were grown in the 1920s, because that's the historical era of the King's Garden. So it's all Vermont all the time. But yeah, some of the problems that I face, Ralph mentioned labor, and that's true. I have 2 absolutely glorious staff that I've trained very hard. They've gone from not knowing a lot or little to just absolute experts in what they do. They work hard. They deserve a way to come back every year. This is the first year they've had issues with the 10-week gap for unemployment. They were told several different things by different people at the Department of Labor. I did fill out my paperwork. I did make phone calls to advocate for them. First, they were told that they needed a callback date, which I gave 10 weeks hence. Then they were told that was the wrong callback date, and it depended on what different people they got. They come to find out they had to start looking for work where they didn't need to. They had to submit their 3 places that they sought employment. And I almost lost one of them because she just said, I don't understand what's going on. I talked to a gentleman there because I wanted to advocate for them, and I was just curious. I wasn't, I was very nice about it. And he said, well, it's my understanding that the Vermont government is trying to do away with the 10-week unemployment gap. I don't know if that's true, but that's what the gentleman told me. Sorry,
I haven't heard that, but.
Okay.
But sometimes, even though we're sitting here, we're the last to know.
I know.
You know how it is right at home, right? Sometimes you're the last to know.
Absolutely. But I guess the reason.
We'll check on that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, because I wish I could be open all year long, but because of the zoning in my town, and also the ag rules, because I'm zoned a farm stand, I can only be open 8 months of the year. That's my town
What
zoning.
part of Russia are you from? You can only be open 8 months?
I can only be open 8 months of the year.
Is that a local zoning
That's
ordinance?
a local zoning ordinance for farm stand.
In Essex, Vermont.
In Essex, Vermont. I would like to be open year round.
I mean, Christmas, right? I mean, if you wanted to put something out, you can't do it.
Well, so what I do is, I will admit, I know I'm being recorded, but I pull it. I do classes. We have lots of classes on wreath making with Vermont grains that I cut from my land.
Yeah.
We do tufa troughs with indoor succulents, and I offer. We have an open house coming up before we open, where people for the season, where people will come in, and I've grown all these indoor succulents, and I will teach them how to properly plant them and raise them, and just in time for their Easter table. So a lot of what I do is education to help support my income when I can't be open. I wish I could have brought you all a bottled up smell of my greenhouse right now. I wish you could do that, because it's earth and floral scents with the seedlings from Fort Ticonderoga that are growing on, and also all the plugs that I'm growing on for this year. It's so warm, and we have one greenhouse. We're very small, like I said, and we have 4 full-time employees, including myself. And when we open up the greenhouse, we have lots of the new bees that open the doors because it's so hot. We have lots of bees that are starting to emerge from their winter habitats that come in and pollinate our flowers. We also attract, because of the plants we grow, beneficial insects that will come in from their winter habitats and will actually feed on the aphids, which are something that always happens in a greenhouse. I mean, aphids suck, but that's, a constant problem. So we don't have to deal with it with heavy pesticides. We can actually control what goes on with, we buy in insects, beneficial insects from other places as well, and also other beneficial organisms that help take care of any pests that we have. We scout regularly so that we can prevent a pest outbreak. So this is one of the benefits of being Vermont grown, is that we know what we grow, we know what goes into our plants. We know that if you plant a Vermont grown plant, it will survive.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I think the Vermont grown is great. We've been talking a lot about pollinators in this committee. This committee, prior to getting on it, they've done a lot on it. But does it help? I'm just wondering about diseases coming in from non-Vermont grown plants. So if you go to your local box store and you pick something up, could you be putting pollinators in jeopardy there then?
Absolutely,
Okay.
because their inputs from where they buy plants from in Florida
Yeah.
and the other places that Ralph mentioned, because they use heavy duty pesticides.
Okay,
People understandably want to have a perfect looking plant. If your plants are interacting with pollinators, sometimes they're host plants for caterpillars. So a bite will be out here and there, but you aren't supporting your local pollinators by letting this happen. My plants are not perfect, but they're perfect for your gardens.
Where,
Thank you.
where are you located in this?
I'm on Brigham Hill Road, and as I like to remind people, I'm still on the paved part. So no worries about mud
but
season.
yeah,
We are actually 2.5 miles from intersection of Route 15 and Old Stage Road. We are easily Googled too, so come visit.
thank you.
Well, I was just wondering why they would have a zoning rule that you could only be open 8 months out of the year. We like to see people working. And if
Me
you
too.
could work 10 months instead of 8, but those are questions we'll chase down. Because I'm sure you've chased it down.
Yes, and I do know, I was told by our zoning person, Sharon Kelly, that the ag rules supersede town zoning rules, but in her understanding, it was still the 8 months that I could be open. And I'm also limited by the percentage of plants to hard goods that I can sell. I can't sell any more than 25% of my revenue for hard goods, which means that I buy in pots for people to plant in, but I can't have shovels and pruners, and I can kind of massage the rules by having soil amendments and different bags of soil. I do get most of my soils from Vermont Compost Company, and I also buy in my fertilizers from North Country Organics, which is in, thank you, Bradford. So once again, all Vermont, all the time.
Stephanie, you folks know Stephanie.
I'm Stephanie
Yeah.
Smith with the Agency of Agriculture.
And I read about you in AgriView, which I get on a regular basis.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's an article coming out on me next week.
On
All right.
It's always above the fold.
You posing with chicken?
This guy's a chicken. He's in more shape than you're in. He can only have 5 chickens in Bennington.
Right.
No, the question, Stephanie, isn't horticulture and landscaping, isn't that under ag or is it?
Yes, so yes, nursery greenhouse cultivation is considered farming and is part of agriculture. The one piece that, I mean, the facts would matter of any situation with respect to the operation of a business. But some of the considerations would be the hard goods and the pots and plants, and that would come into play. So yeah, I mean, something certainly that we can talk about at length and figure out whether or not zoning applies in your situation. But but it would take time to do an analysis.
Yeah, because when I was younger, growing up on the, grew up on a farm, I would have liked to have not been able to milk for 4 months. That was a damn pain every
Well, that being said, we do overwinter some things in our greenhouse while most of it's outside. So I am still working over those 4 months. I'm just not open to the public, except for
You
my
just don't have
classes.
money coming in.
Yeah, which is like, but it's the creative budgeting,
Yeah.
as we call it.
Irene?
Yeah, I'm surprised because you may only have one greenhouse, but it's sizable. I've been there. And I think it's still heated pretty.
It is. We do cut it down by a third, and so we get a third of it in the winter time. And that's also so that we can start the seed for the King's Garden.
And you're using biomass, right? I mean, it's pretty green.
Well,
Or did you-
we had a, yeah,
Okay.
we're back to using propane.
Okay, good to know.
So we had a meltdown, so to speak, with our wood pellet stove.
But you tried. You had
Well, we
biomass for
tried.
a while,
We
right?
did,
You had
we
biomass.
did.
You wouldn't like to buy another one, right?
I think we're good.
My question has to do with, when you say farm stand, that's just the last thing I think of. I mean, when I think of a farm stand, I think somebody's got a little booth out by the,
Right.
you have a full-blown retail establishment with acres of plants.
Mhm.
And farm stand just seems to be the wrong designation, so maybe Essex needs to expand its definition. I don't know.
I
We
would
probably
think
tried,
so.
we probably tried.
Well, I'd also like to try again, but I get so busy that I don't really have time to spend at, at the legislative level. But also too, I want to say we also do wholesale as well. A lot of people, landscapers come to us because we're known for the natives that we grow. We even have landscapers from out of state. We have legit customers from out of state that recognize our brand. So thing is like, ag review, I mentioned that, one last thing, and I'll wrap it up, is wouldn't that be great if there was a little horticulture section or Vermont grown horticulture section in ag review? Or there's the field reports that come from the Vermont Veg and Berries Association. What if we had our own little section, or we could even weave ourselves into that section, just to get us in the public's eye, the ag eye. I think that would be really beneficial.
Well,
for us.
It isn't like you're a small business. I mean, you folks generate a lot of money here in Vermont.
I think we were pretty much just talk about the growing aspect and the dollars associated with that. When you start including landscaping, which includes mowers, I mean, then the numbers that are generated in the report that Linda put on the website for you guys includes landscapers. And that is a huge portion, more and more with higher density housing, condo associations, commercial. So there's a lot of dollars in the kind of growing economy.
And also, we are known as a destination nursery. We have lots of display gardens with signage and the whole bit. When people come from out of state or come from southern Vermont, and they're like, where can I go eat? Or, where can I buy this, thus and such? I'm always our staff and I are referring them to places in Essex to eat, or, we have shovels. Clausen's is not far away. That's a good place to get that. So we all kind of work together. And I will wrap up by saying, I was just, my nursery was voted by the Vermont Nursery and Landscape Association as the 2022 Retailer of the Year, which just really,
That's very special.
very special.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I also wanted to say that was because of I feel that it's not me who won the award, it's the whole VNLA, all of the nurseries that I've collaborated with over the years. I really couldn't have done it without us. We're a very collaborative organization.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say thank you for your time.
Thank
And
you.
have any questions, fire away.
Are there
No, that
any
was great.
other questions? You know, we'll work with the agency on trying to get stuff over there so you can get into AgriView. And
Yeah, I think what we would also like is for, to recognize us as an association that can be called on when you are crafting legislation and work with the agency in terms of making sure that it works from those of us who are on the ground trying to get more product out to customers.
well, Irene, you're a senator from Chittenden North, I guess it is. On the floor the other day, I said, I don't know what district she's from, but she's from Chittenden or Franklin County. But Irene, you know, mentioned that we ought to get you folks in and you know, sometimes we get wrapped up in other issues and pretty soon it's time to go home. And so if we don't call you, you call us.
That's fair.
And don't be shy about it. But so we got the unemployment issue that we should talk to people about. And we've got, you know, the idea of why you aren't considered agriculture and can operate when you want to operate. But that's a real local issue, but still, we could check it out. And is there anything else?
Well, I heard the number 53 million from New Hampshire. Do you happen to have a number off the top of your head without me looking at our website in front of you? As to what kind of economic engine you folks are for Vermont? And I know it's smaller than.
Well, we're, what's listed under the USDA to compare each state is we're only at like 25 million of what's actually grown in state. And, you know, what we're saying is that there's opportunity as the state looks at diversifying our agricultural production, that growing the nursery, especially because we need thousands and thousands of plants to do all the restoration work that's planned through the Clean Water Initiative. And so we can't even do projects of riparian restoration because we're buying the bare root stock that the commercial growers are also buying from Michigan, Oregon, Ohio, Minnesota. Those commercial nurseries are growing the bare root stock that gets shipped via UPS or FedEx. And then we need to have cold storage to keep them until they can be planted. But those are the kinds of products that could easily start to be growing on much of the land that is already in farming.
Yeah.
But it's the same problems of cost of land, getting some of the infrastructure, which now includes irrigation. But I mean, it's definitely, you know, there's a market out there. We're not having to create the market. The market is there. We need the product.
Just take advantage.
Yes.
And the 25 is excluding landscapers.
Excluding landscapers. That's just what's grown, nursery and greenhouse products. This is plants. That's, not, if you put landscaping in there, it's,
3 times 4 guys.
10 times probably.
Well, any other questions? Irene?
That was just great.
No, you're like a best kept secret, so I'm glad.
Well, yes, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming here. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you ready? Wait, do we want to hear from the ag folks?
We can always come back.
Yeah, maybe, Stephanie, in the meantime, you could check out with labor and see, or could you check with them to see if we need to have them come in, or if they can give you
About the 10-week.
a 10-week deal if they're trying to do away with it? And No.
I can certainly, yeah, I can find someone to contact with the Department of Labor, yeah, yeah. Cool, yeah, and we'll let you know who that might be, and then we can also return if needed
Something like
for
that
further
for
conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miriam over there, that's a commissioner.
Get the picture and you got. Send it to Sears.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you, folks. We're very appreciative, and we will reach out.
Yeah. How are you this morning?
Good, how are you this morning? I do want to just state that the House is on their final reading of the budget and there might be a roll call, so if I scoot out, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, if you have,
Okay,
well, they'll ring the bell.
they'll ring the bells.
Yeah.
You're an S, so
Cool.
you'll have time to plan.
Yes, so much time.
Yeah, so, tell us a little bit about 105 or 205.
Sure, well, good morning, thank you for having me. For the record, Representative Heather Supranat, Vice Chair of your House Agriculture, Food Resiliency and Forestry Committee. I represent the Windsor 4 District, Barnard, Pomfret, and Bridgewater. And I am a co-sponsor of House Bill 205. I co-sponsored with Representative Rodney Graham, who is our ranking member. So this is a very straightforward bill that aims to invest in the work of our small farmers by establishing a funding program designed with their scale in mind. H205 establishes the Small Farmer Diversification and Transition Grant Program within the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. The fund would provide small farmers in Vermont with state financial assistance to diversify production or to transition from one form of farming to another. Many of the current granting programs are highly specific in their eligibility criteria. They often require a match, which is financially inhibitive to many small farmers, and they dictate how the funds need to be used. This has proven to be a challenging framework for our farmers to work within, since every farm has unique needs and goals for their business. H205 seeks to eliminate these barriers to funding by making this grant available for small farmers only across all sectors of agriculture. As laid out in the bill, an applicant must demonstrate to the Secretary of Agriculture that they are a small farmer, which is defined in this bill as a person who earns at least 1/2 of the person's annual gross income from farming, as defined under the Internal Revenue Code, or a person who is engaged in farming as defined in 10 VSA 6001, which we should all be very familiar with, regardless of the size of the parcel, or is a small farm subject to the required agricultural practices. We have loosely defined in this bill what the grants can be used for. We didn't want to limit the creativity of farmers, you know that they are very adaptive individuals, and to set such small and narrow parameters would really limit the creative enterprises. So we said that the grants can be used for diversifying farm products produced by the applicant, transitioning the applicant from one form of farming to another, processing of farm products on the farm, and the development of an accessory on-farm business. Grant shall not exceed $15,000, and all projects shall be completed within 12 months of the receipt. The Secretary shall provide public notice of available grants and shall provide applicants with technical assistance in complying with application requirements. The application process will open beginning November 1st of each year and close December 31st. And this was intentional because if you try to have a granting program open for farmers in the middle of their most busy season, likely they will not be able to apply. Application shall not be processed until the Secretary determines that the application is administratively complete. An application shall be evaluated based on the following criteria, which shall be weighted equally. First, the potential from the proposed diversification or transition to create additional income, and the viability of the possible markets identified in the plan for the proposed product. The Secretary shall award grants to the applicants according to the total weighted scores, beginning with the highest score until all funds are expended. The committee opted for this model over a first come, first served because we wanted to ensure equity with the granting model.
So there would be a grant committee that would analyze all the grants.
So I can speak to that. That's the appropriations amendment. So the folks who would be administering it would be the working lands individuals, although it would still be within the Agency of Agriculture. Yes. Would you like me to continue speaking to the appropriations amendment? Because it did previously have a $500,000 appropriation, but it's now down to $350,000 and is a pilot.
So it's a 1 year
It's a 1 year.
trial. Yeah.
Yes. But as we know, the majority of grants are very oversubscribed, and likely this one would be as well.
Yeah.
And I would welcome any questions from the committee.
Yeah, so what's the date, the dates you're gonna get this started when?
So the effective date would be July 1st, 2023, and then they would not open applications until November 1st, and then close them on December 31st.
So they have 2 months.
They would have 2 months, yes. And we've also built into this that there needs to be adequate notice to farmers and adequate technical support throughout that, which is fairly standard for grant programs, but just to make sure.
Is that a 1 year program or a pilot or 2?
So this is the one.
It's not technically either 1 year or
Oh,
pilot.
there's no end.
It's codified, it would be put in statute,
Oh, it's not a pilot.
but the Committee on Appropriations has, only provided, they didn't provide base funding. They
Right.
provided a one-time fund.
See, what I'm thinking is if you lose this summer,
Mhm.
you get into next winter, they're gonna issue the grants November, December.
Mhm.
You got 3 or 4 bad months there to, January, February, March and
They're gonna issue the grants, and if you can apply in November and December, it's gonna be January or February before they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be next summer or spring and summer that you could try these different small farm operations, different projects.
Are you saying you would like them to get funding sooner?
Well, I don't know if we get ready for this summer, but, there is a big demand from our ag sector to get things going.
Right.
Other questions on the bill, Brian?
Sure. Can you just give us just an example of what this would actually do? So if you're a
Yeah.
farm for, kind of walk us through.
Absolutely. So on the transition front, say you are a small scale dairy farm and you're acknowledging that perhaps dairy isn't sustainable for you any longer and you're looking to transition out, but you want to remain farming.
Okay.
And you want to transition to raising beef cattle.
Yeah.
This could help you support in the purchase of that infrastructure. Or on the diversification model, say that you're a vegetable farm and you want to increase your storage crop production because you have a wholesaling need, but you don't actually have the storage space for that. You could use this grant for that. The criteria is really open and it really allows the farmers to pick what they need for their business model.
How did you come up with 15,000?
As a cap, we wanted to reach the largest amount of small farms. And when we had originally had 500,000 as our original appropriation, we did the math that would be around 33 farms. And we thought that would be a really great start. We acknowledge that a lot of these farms that would be participating are fairly small, and $15,000 can make a remarkable impact in a small scale. Yeah, in a small scale project for somebody who is just needing a little additional support. I think there are many, many grants that already exist that have a larger grant number. Most of the ones that are being allocated right now are above 25,000 and some are in the 100,000s. We're not talking about those
Little
scale
guy,
projects.
that's
Yeah,
just to write a grant to compete with the bigger guys is quite a job.
right.
So we have a chicken farmer.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it. If I transition from chickens to, let's say,
Flowers.
turkeys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would be,
You'd
it's a
fit right-
small farm.
You'd fit right in.
Some would call it a micro farm.
yeah.
So, you could at least sell the turkeys come things.
No, you fit right
Yeah.
in with the turkeys,
Yeah.
one turkey with another.
So there's no down, oh, you have to earn a certain percentage of your income, don't you?
So there are three definitions of how we defined what it means to be a farmer.
There's oars, right?
There are
There are
ors, yes. If you are going by the Internal Revenue Code, you have to earn 50% of your income from farming. However, you can also still be defined as farming in 10 VSA 6001 or defined as farming by the required agricultural practices. So there are three ways that you can be defined as a farmer. And we did that because there are folks who have shared households, and if they're going at this together, then often their income would look higher instead of what is actually being produced by the farmer. So we focus that on the applicant, and that's where the Internal Revenue Code definition comes into play.
You're out.
Are you not a small farmer?
No.
He shouldn't be allowed to apply in.
If
We were the
50% of his income is 5 chickens,
Right.
he.
They're golden chickens.
Yeah.
That's what they're laying.
Oh, that's the
Yeah.
chicken that laid the golden egg.
So I can't do the math in my head, Heather, but 350 divided by 15, how many farms is that?
It's about 20, isn't it?
Yeah, however, not every single farm is going to go for the maximum grant award, right? Like that's the maximum number. Some farms will need, say, $3,000 for a really nice cedar, you know, that's going to make their greens productions exponentially more profitable.
Okay.
They're not all going to subscribe to that one.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
20. Any other questions? So what are you voting on up there today?
Oh, our budget. And there's
Oh,
some
geez,
amendments.
You better get up there,
So, yeah.
get that passed.
I know the house was on the floor until like 10 last night.
Well, thanks a lot for coming down.
Okay.
Sorry to have to pull you off the floor, but
No, this is
we
great.
wanna get this going more. So,
Well, thank you so much. And if you have any further questions, please do reach
Yep.
out and let me know.
yeah, okay,
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
yeah, thanks, yeah. So, Michael, you wanna run through this and, I expect you put this together?
I did.
Yep. So, good morning, Michael, it's good to have you with us.
All right. So just kind of as context for whether this is a pilot or 1 year ongoing, this program, at least its origination, reminds me of the Farm Agronomic Practices Program, which was something that Senator Cattell and Senator Starr basically like freestyled one day in committee. And it was put in as session law, and the agency never thought it was going to fly. It became really popular, got statutorily codified, evolved from there. It's not called the Farm Agronomic Practices Program anymore, but it's been a pretty successful and pretty popular grant program. This reminds me of that. Just like looking at kind of a small need or a obvious need to some people, and then implementing a program. to
That's still
address it.
running.
So it's now called the Capital Equipment Assistance Program. It got smashed together with the manure program.
That must have smelled.
Spend a few bucks there.
Well, is that the fertilizer to make that grow?
Yeah. But it's still there. You know, what it funded is still there. It's cover cropping, and alternative practices. But so this is kind of like, I see this program as it's kind of, its origination very similar to that. So what you have on your website is draft 5.1 of HGO 5. the as version is not available yet, because it just passed yesterday. You'll see on page 1, slide 7. There's a new subchapter being added to 6 VSA chapter 207, which is the chapter in which the Working Lands program is located as well. The program is created to provide small farmers with state financial assistance to diversify production on a farm or transition from one form of farming to another. So the definitions in most statutes are normally at the beginning. The definitions in the statute are at the end, at the request of the committee.
They put them at the end.
Yeah, we'll go over that in a minute. So assistance is in the form of grants, can be used for diversifying farm products, transitioning the applicant from one form of farming to another, processing of farm products on the farm under control by the applicant, and development of an accessory on-farm business. The applicant has to demonstrate to the agency that they are a small farmer, and we'll look at that definition in a second. But they house not more than the number of animals specified in 4857. That's 199 dairy cows if they're a dairy farm. They have to show that there's potential from the proposed diversification or transition to create additional income for the small farmer. They have to propose a plan for diversification or transition that includes possible markets for the proposed product. And they have to show that at the time of application, they're not a medium farm or large farm. They can grow into a medium farm or large farm. Their proposed plan may be something that takes them from small farm to medium farm, but at the time of application, they have to be a small farm. And then the secretary issues the grants when the funds are available. So this year there will be funds if you approve. Maximum amount of the grant is $15,000 per farmer per year. And all grants or all projects under the grant shall be completed within 12 months. I do think that regardless of the application period and the pushing the grants out, say in January or February, they will be committed at that point. And if the term of the agreement is a 12-month term, I don't think there will be subject to BAA when you come back around, because the grants, although they won't be all pushed out,
Yeah.
they will be committed at that point.
To the program or
Right,
to
or
the
to
farmer?
the applicant. Maybe Abby can talk about that. I don't think you're gonna have necessarily an issue with them trying to get done by the end of fiscal year 2024, because the funds will be committed under a grant agreement with a 12-month period for implementation.
I don't know, maybe. My question, I guess, I was gonna ask Heather. I should may have looked into this. This sounds very much like the Working Lands.
Yes.
And why couldn't they have created a separate program within the Working Lands program, or had a second tier, or
That was discussed.
what it was?
And so, as you know, the Working Lands program, it's very popular. And so there's a lot of demand for the funds in that program. B, the board has a ton of ability under its statutory authority to set criteria and conditions for the award. And the committee wanted to set their own conditions and criteria for this program. They didn't want to leave it to the Working Lands Enterprise Board to set the criteria and the conditions. That's why they want it separate, so it is specific and not competitive with other potential eligible uses under Working Lands, and they wanted to set their own criteria and conditions.
I would, go ahead, continue.
Okay.
I have a question on that though, Michael. And I'm trying to think of a good example, and I probably won't come up with one. says the maximum amount of grant is 15K and all projects funded have to be completed within 12 months. So what if supply chain, workforce issues prevent, and again, I can't come up with an example, but prevent the project from being completed within the 12 months, then what happens?
You know, I do think, well, let's step back. All of these grants are going to be issued according to terms and conditions in the grant agreement with the Agency of Agriculture. And I expect that the agency follows the administrative bulletin minimum standard terms and conditions. There is opportunity underneath those grant agreements to look for extensions. So I think there's opportunity.
I just would hate for someone to get the grant, have a really good idea, and then get buffaloed by whatever we don't see coming down the road, and then they don't get it, and then they gotta pay it back.
And you know,
Okay.
I obviously am not the person that runs any of the grant programs at the Agency of
Maybe
Agriculture.
Abby can fill us in.
Abby, the expert.
Thank you.
So page 2, line 19, secretary provides public notice of available grants, provides applicants with technical assistance. That was very important. Representative Sopranacci wanted a reference to the agency helping farmers apply. The agency is directed to publicize the program in its newsletters, press releases, emails, and other communications. It doesn't have to do a media campaign. Media campaigns obviously cost money, so that's not a mandate. Page 3, the application process is open from November 1 to December 31st of each year. Applications shall not be processed until the application is administratively complete. And then there's a waiting. The committee was very adamant that they didn't want this program to be first come, first served. And so they struggled a little bit with the criteria for how to award or prioritize awards. So they went to a waiting process where the agency will look at these 2 criteria: the potential from the proposed diversification or transition to create additional income, and then the viability of the possible markets. And we'll assign a score to each of those, and then the applicant will then be ranked, and they will then award the grants from the highest ranked to the lowest ranked until the money is exhausted. So that's,
So they wouldn't be able to really do much until after December 31. And then they'd have to go, if it's 15, no, 20, yes. 20 to get to the 300. So they'd have to go through the 20 or 30 applications and pick out the best 20.
well, maybe there's 40 applications, and they go through and they rank all of them and then weight each of them. And it's the highest ranking 20 would get the award. And then you come to the definitions. So farm products, as you know, there are many definitions of farm and agricultural products in statute. This is a little bit different. That's why we're not specifically cross-referencing some of the existing ones, because it's not about what they're growing, it's what they might grow as well, because there is a transition or a diversification component of it. When I looked at some of the other states that have similar programs, say Wisconsin, they do things like it's crops grown or to be grown. So that's a potential future crop that they may grow, that they might transition to or diversify to. And so that's why there's a separate definition of farm product.
So you could, if you were a small vegetable producer and you wanted to switch to hemp or cannabis, you could
Yes.
apply for
Yes.
a grant to. What about,
Well, cannabis,
That's tricky, isn't it?
no,
oh,
It's
that's,
really tricky.
oh, that's not considered.
that's
Alright.
not currently farming.
I thought we put something in there though, so that they wouldn't, well, I guess we just said they wouldn't, small plots would not lose their
Right.
current use. But that's not farming.
And then the crops to be grown include most of the traditional crops defined as farming in Vermont or ag products in Vermont. Plants grown for food, feed, and fiber, but not trees for timber. But Christmas trees are a traditional agricultural crop. Maple sap is horticultural, viticultural, or orchard crops, and then pasture as well.
Those folks that were just in previous, yeah, horticulture,
Yes,
they claim that the market's wide open for people that want to grow trees and things that they sell. They're having to go way to Oregon in one instance to get trees. So you could switch from veggies to horticulture.
yes. And then it also includes livestock born or unborn, again, the potential future livestock, including goods produced in aquaculture. Remember, in the definition of farming in Vermont, it includes the production of cultured trout. There actually isn't anybody that does culture trout anymore. There are a couple of facilities that are doing aquaculture, such as the shrimp guys on Shelburne Road down at the old Nordic Farms farm.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And so this would allow, by just saying aquaculture instead of culture trout, it would allow individuals like that to apply. But they would have to be a small farmer. And that means, as Representative Supranant said, you have three options. The first is similar to the use value appraisal definition of a farmer. You have to get 50% of your income from farming as defined by the Internal Revenue Service. The second is you have to get 50% of your income from being farming according to the definition of farming under Act 250, which is the default definition of farming. And then the third is you just need to be a small farm. So remember, a small farm, it's generally 10 acres or more, and you have the floor of the number of animals, or you're making $2,000 or more from the sale of agricultural products. And you can even go down to 4 acres in some instances
Money is,
if you meet some of the
oh,
conditions.
strawberries, yeah, strawberry farm.
So that's how they wanted this to be really about farmers and not somebody that has a large 2-acre garden. So that's why you get the 50% in the first two, and then in the third, you basically get that acreage limitation, the acres plus the $2,000 for the minimum number of animals.
Yep.
And then you come to the appropriation that's in the House Committee on Agriculture's proposal is not relevant anymore. The House Appropriations Committee, which is on your website, they appropriated $350,000 of one-time funds from the general fund 2024 for the purpose of implementing the Small Farmers Diversification and Transition Program. When the member of House Appropriation purported their amendment, he did call it a pilot, but it's not a pilot. Pilots are normally session law. They're normally durational. They sometimes even have sunsets on them. This is in statute. It has no durational aspect of it, meaning it's not just until 2024, 2025. And it does not sunset. It's going to be in statute, and it will be something that you could fund going forward if and when you want to. Any of the other ag statutory grant programs.
Do you know, I should ask Heather, who they had in for witnesses, or if they had in?
They had, she read off the witness list yesterday and before, I can't remember it. They had not a whole lot of people,
It's a
but I would-
plan that they devised themselves as a community. Yeah, well, that's understandable. I mean, questions from Michael?
No. So, thank you. What's the question?
Sure.
Is it typical or not to put in some sort of date at which the grants will be handed out?
So, do you mean that kind of window for application or?
No, like the agency gets the applications. On January 1st, they have 2 months to hand them out because otherwise these farmers are gonna be busy. They
So,
don't want to deal with what they're doing the next year.
so most of the grant programs don't have that in statute. The one time you did put that in statute was the CRF Dairy Assistance Program. And because of the need and the need to move the money up to the federal constraints, it didn't work out that well.
Anything else from Michael? So Abby, would you like to? Start? So, morning. So I'm sure you've looked this bill over.
Yeah.
And I don't know, were you in House Ag to testify?
We did not
Oh,
testify though. Yes.
no one from Ag was? That's, no. Different. Did you have a question already? And we haven't even got to.
Yeah, my first question to them was gonna be, does it take, what's it gonna take to hand this out for the ag agency? So I'm glad you're here. That was my first question.
Well, I mean, we don't need to know that. Put it
Just
on.
tell them to do it, and if they
Tell 'em
have
to
good
do
staff, that's fine.
Don't come back till you get it done. So anyways, Abby, it's good to have you with us. We received this bill and wanted, well, I wondered why it wasn't part of working lands, but you'd have a subset for small farms and that would sort of be run. Well, it's gonna be run out of the same shop anyways, but that could be looked at, but that's what we have before us. And maybe you could tell us how it would blend in with other grants that you already do.
Sure.
And what, with this amount of money, is that gonna get us started on something where you could work your way up to be a better competitor in a larger grant pool, like working groups? So, floor is yours, and start wherever you want.
Okay, thank you. Abby Willard, Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, for the record. I mean, I think I want to start by saying we really appreciate a bill that focuses on support for small farms. And we've continued to recognize the importance of supporting diversification, creating opportunities for businesses to transition into new production or new markets, and the need for our agricultural community to be able to access new markets. So I think the genesis of H205 and the focus on the small farm population with those goals very much aligns with kind of the concerns and opportunities that we see in agriculture. And we've testified before this committee and others about our concern about the loss of agricultural land and the viability of agriculture in the state. And it sort of feels that we're at this very critical moment in time about thinking what is the opportunities to support the next generation of farmers, how do we attract people to want to come to Vermont and farm, and how do we support businesses that already are in the agricultural field to be more viable and profitable. So anyway, increasing viability of agriculture is certainly, I think, an outcome that would occur from what's outlined here in H205. I will say there are some of the recommendations or some of the language in the bill that do give me pause and about kind of through all the years that we've spent refining granting processes and working with applicants and grantees, which I want to just talk to a few of those. And then I can get to your question, Senator Starr, around how this might dovetail with working lands. I appreciate the wanting to have an application time period that's after harvest season. So that's I think the impetus behind the starting November 1st and closing on December 31st. And I think that's wise in some respects to sort of wait until we get a frost and people are not out in the fields to allow them time to work on a grant application. The concern, though, is that December 31st is New Year's Eve. It's a Sunday. And we know that applicants wait to the very last minute many times to put in their application. And our team gets many calls and emails in the final days before an application deadline to say, oh, I can't figure out how to use the web portal and my application's not loading, or you need a letter of support. I don't know where to get a letter of support. Like lots of questions that come in. Our staff will not be working on Sunday, December 31st. I mean, they probably will because they're very committed and they're dedicated to helping their applicants submit a successful grant proposal. But I'd rather not have it close on a Sunday and a holiday in the middle of the break between Christmas and New Year's.
Well, we could move it without Christmas Day. What day is that fall?
That would be Sunday also.
That's also a Sunday, right? But I think there's some flexibility there of sort of saying, let's try to get the application grant period to be kind of post-harvest season, and I think we could probably adjust that a little bit. For comparison, the working lands timeline for our business enhancement grants, which are typically designed for small growers, small farms. We let people know that the request for proposals is available in early September. It's not open for applications, but we're putting it out there. So we're saying, okay, here's the funding opportunity, here's the eligibility, here's what we're looking to award. Spend a couple of weeks thinking about your application, getting yourselves organized, and then release the request for proposals, meaning like open the application period at the end of September. And then we close it at the end of October. So it's only open for 1 month compared to H205 that wants to have it open for 60 days.
Would you think a grant like this would have to be open 2 months to give them time to do it?
I mean, I think 2 months is nice. The challenge is, and you sort of spoke a little bit, I think, to this, Senator Collmore, about then when the project would start. So it takes us about 4 to 5 months from when an application period closes to when we are executing grant agreements. Because there's a review process, There's negotiation back and forth with the applicant or the grantee at that point around what their goals and performance measures and outcomes will be of their project. Then we have to get it signed by both the agency and the grantee. So that takes us multiple months. So if an application closed at the end of December, they wouldn't be starting their project until April or May, and that's too late. And so typically, that's why we have our application period closed at the end of October, so that they can start their grants in February. And that gives them a little bit of time to hire contractors or get in touch with the equipment purchases before they start their growing season.
So we back theirs up a month, their application period.
Yeah, it open,
So.
it could open October 1st, and the question would be, do we close it,
30.
you know, yeah, maybe even like
Or even the
December 15th,
Or-
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, I think, I
6
mean,
weeks.
typically, that's why that
Should
level
be
of,
a small,
The smaller the window, it's
6
we're
weeks.
still gonna apply the last week, right?
yeah, they're gonna wait. until
unfortunately,
the end
they
anyway.
often do, not all, but
But I don't want you
many
to
do.
run into Thanksgiving either, so I would say the 15th of November or December. I'm with you. Like, let's make it earlier in the month so that your staff has a chance to.
I mean, I think 6 weeks is great, I mean, I think if we did October 1st to November 15th, I think that could work.
And just ask this,
Sure.
and Working Lands is the place that you would suggest where the most similar is in this? Or is there any other grant program that's run? Would this fit with anything else?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, this is another kind of point that I wanted to make. So Working Lands already has one of its kind of carve-out funding opportunities, which is called Business Enhancement Grants. And those are grants that are between $20,000 and $35,000. And they're relatively small awards, and they've often gone to small businesses. We don't capture on the application currently if they are a small farm, so I can't confirm that they are a small farm by any of these three definitions outlined in H205. But that program kind of already is targeting that population of relatively small businesses. And between 2018 and 2023, so over the last 6 years, we've invested almost $1 million in grants in that category. So 53 grants have happened in dairy, maple, meat, and produce. And some of those projects, I pulled up a few examples, would be purchasing a walk-in cooler for a produce operation, creating and building cold storage space, doing a poultry processing expansion project, supporting a maple retail marketing project, improved grain storage on a small dairy, creating a vacuum sealing room for a cheese producer, launching e-commerce sales for a business, and putting in a freezer for a small scale ice cream operation. So those are examples of the type of, I think, expansion or diversification that you might see in the H205 applicants. And I think Working Lands, again, already has sort of a reputation and an engagement with those types of producers.
Well, it gets to my question, who's gonna review the grant? How much time is it? If I create a separate thing, or would we not be just better to tie this in and tweak that particular program a little and put a little more money in there? Because I don't know how many grants there would be, but if there's 100, somebody's gotta go through them all, organize it, and
Right.
do all of that. And if we've already got somebody doing that in a certain area, just be less about.
Thinking about redundancy, or you mean like now?
Oh,
It's the work.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
you gotta have somebody
Well,
with
be
the
the
hours
same.
to go through the grants. And if we got something that's already there, that somebody's reviewing those grants, and we just tweaked it a little and put some money, that would seem a lot more efficient to me.
Senator, I appreciate the question and the care and concern for the most efficient, less redundant process. I think it would be the Working Lands team, meaning, so there's there's the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative as a program. There is Working Lands staff within the Agency of Agriculture, and we have 2.5 staff. We have a program manager, a program lead, and then we have a half of a position from a grants and contracts position standpoint that helps process agreements. So that team is what launches our Working Land opportunities every year. And then there's the Working Lands Board. And so for funding that goes through the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative program, there's a process of receiving applications. We create a review committee that includes external partners and internal Agency of Agriculture staff that review all those applications. Every application gets reviewed 3 times by 3 different reviewers. All those scores get ranked and put into a spreadsheet, kind of as you're imagining. There's quite a process to kind of review and compare all of those. And then we hold a review committee meeting, which is not the board meeting. So this is, again, all those reviewers that reviewed applications. We sit around a table in a room like this, and we talk through all the applications about which ones do we want to recommend as a slate forward to the board for consideration. And we kind of knock off the bottom, we definitely agree to the top, and we spend most of the time debating the middle, because that's where it gets a little tricky, is there's like a lot of, because it's always oversubscribed. And then we submit a slate of recommendation grants to the Working Lands Board. Then the Working Lands Board meets and they do the same thing. They review all the applications, they look at the slate that's been provided, they sometimes talk about grants that aren't on the slate that they have questions about, and then they make a recommendation to the secretary for final awards.
And this may not be a fair question because you may not know. For each applicant that puts in for what we're doing already.
Yeah.
Is there, how much time goes into each
Oh,
application?
that's a good question.
Because as I look at this, you know, if I said, I just put an hour to each and 100 people apply, and it's an hour, that's 2.5 weeks for one person for that. And just to dump that on, I don't know what their workload is now, but that would seem rather significant.
Yeah.
Or what you're describing for a process sounds like you'd spend more than that amount of time.
We probably do, but the difference is the amount of time spent per applicant is spread across a wider team than just those 2.5 in the Working Lands team. So we rely upon great partners that review applications that bring a lot of knowledge and expertise about different sectors and different businesses. Plus, you know, we bring in folks from our water quality team and from our food safety side and from the farm division to sort of review applications so that we have as much expertise as possible.
You know, and this comes from somebody who's been here a long time.
Yeah.
And I've run a business myself, and everybody has great ideas, and there's lots of great ideas around this building now. There's very little practical about what's it take to get the work done that we have great ideas.
That's not very nice.
Will you tell me it's not true?
Well, I wouldn't.
That would be nice.
I just, and we keep piling stuff on, and what's it take to do a good job to get this done? Because when we do stuff and we don't do a good job at it, it reflects on the whole state.
Well, it sounded to me though, and it sounds to me, even if it wasn't said, that they don't want to throw these little farms in with the Working Lands process, because there's a lot of big fish in there getting the money. And I would think, from what I felt and gathered, the House feels that the big guys, the big applicants would eat this up eventually.
Yep.
And they wanted to keep it totally separate. And
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing also.
Pardon?
That's what I'm understanding and hearing also, that was their preference.
yeah, and I don't know, I mean, it's a small amount in the grand scheme of things. It's a small amount of money. And if we could figure out a simplified way to administer it, separately, the house would be a lot happier than mixing it in with the working lands.
So there's no exclusions in this. In other words, you can apply for more than one grant, right?
So that's another, great point where from our agency's there's nothing in H205 that says that, but from the agency's standpoint, we would probably ask an applicant to choose between applying for a working lands business enhancement or this small farm diversification and transition program. And so that was another one of my points, is like, if I were a small farm, I would probably want to apply for a granting program that's up to $35,000 than capped at 15. I mean, I might take the gamble of like, there might be less competition in the 15,000, but I'm not actually sure that that's the case, because again, if we've invested $1 million in small business operation expansion and diversification over the past 6 years, my guess is that most of those business enhancement applicants in the working lands program are probably small farms. Again, maybe not small farms on 50% of their income being due to the agricultural products, but definitely a small farm by the RAPs. And again, we haven't asked the questions of those applicants previously to confirm that.
To get at yours, and the issue that the House might have, is there a way to tweak the language around working lands, so we say you're going to do this separate silo within, and it, because they've already got a review process all set up.
And they're gonna be doing this bill, actually. It's gonna be reviewed. I thought she
That's in the
said,
amendment, yeah.
yeah.
That it would be reviewed by the working lands team or administered by the
Well,
working
it's
lands
not,
team. Is that what you're saying?
it says,
Yeah,
the agency staff that support the Working Lands Enterprise Board shall administer the program.
yeah.
So,
So they're already.
So there are, again, so can we just tweak?
yeah, and I don't know whether we could put a provision in that says, and I don't know what the wording is, you know, new people or people that are already getting funding or grants from another working lands piece aren't eligible. So in other words, we are truly finding new small farms that aren't, I mean, it's kind of like when you're in the playground and you're 6'2" and there's me at 5'6", you get to do a little bit more than I might. So they segregate to the little kids, and then we can play on.
Segregate the
Are you in the road that category?
Why you're gonna make that, you know,
It really didn't make any sense. It made sense to me.
I think we got it, you're the little kid.
I don't know how to do it. I know what they want to do,
Yeah.
but I don't know how to say it.
Well, Michael, is there a way to deal with something like
Sure,
that?
I mean, if you would like, I can work with Abby to come up with language to incorporate the grant under the WeLab. And I'll just work with Abby to come up with something that's acceptable, and we can bring it to you.
I mean, wouldn't that be better than what we got? Easier for you folks to administer?
Yeah, I mean, you have done specific call outs under the Working Lands program in the past, where you've said something like up to a certain amount of money must be spent in this way. So last year it was around meat slaughter and processing.
Oh, yeah.
2 years before that, it was organic dairy support. So I would imagine that we could come up with some sort of language that says, up to $350,000 of the working lands appropriation would have to be invested towards small farm transition or diversification. The implications of that, though, would be, at least as I'm imagining it, would be that then it would be on our timeline, our criteria, and our review process that's within the Working Lands program, which I just want to acknowledge, that's different than what's outlined here.
What's your time?
So again, we would probably announce the RFP is going to be accepting applications, and that announcement would happen in early September. By the end of September, applications would be opened, and then at the end of October, they would close. And that would be for us to be able to put the grant awards on the ground by February, to have executed grant awards by February.
And 'Cause I had October 1 to November 15th, Michael.
My question with the model that Abby just referenced, that's usually been session law, and it's usually been like one time fiscal year in the appropriations bill. And I don't know if that's the model you want to use, or do you want to do what the House wanted to do and make it a kind of permanent statutory program? You do it the way that Abby described it, it's been done in the past. Those are really kind of just one fiscal year prioritizations. And so that's up to you. I just wanted to put that kind of policy decision in front of you.
I would think that we ought to try this under a pilot first, and then we,
Well, we may not want to go to our next one with too many pilots. We already got one going.
well,
You mean the fencing?
I would like, I would think if we started this, we'd want some review.
See that, but with all the new or younger people that want to get into ag or plants, horticulture stuff or any of that, sometimes a little $15,000 chunk of money gets them rolling. And, you know, they'll, maybe half of them or a third of them will succeed, and then they keep growing and you'll lose a half or 2/3 of them. But it's a little seed money to get them started, to try their thumb with their green thumb. And I know working lands, I've never applied for a grant, but I bet you it takes 6 to 15 hours to fill out one of those applications so that you can compete with the big dogs that are in there after the money. And if in this little program, we don't want the professionals, you might say, after it. We want just some people that want to transition out, and they think they need X to be able to transition to, and
It helps.
they can write up a good story about it. You know, I mean, we aren't talking a lot of money here,
Right.
but, you know, I mean, I got started with $25,000. That's 50 years ago. But,
Yeah, that 25 is worth a lot more.
I think I lost it a few times.
Did it burn up once? Or?
Yeah. But no, you know, sometimes you give the right person a leg up and it takes off. And I mean, it's like the lady from Essex that's got that flower business and horticulture business.
One thing I did notice is, and maybe Woodward talked about it, the original bill talked about fiscal year 25. The House Appropriations Committee's amendment is fiscal year 24.
Have to be.
I don't know why I would have said fiscal year 25, that might have been my error.
Okay, and that might not have been the bill has passed. This is the introduction for it, I think. 5.1.
Oh, the bill is introduced. Let's just say it took some work to get to a place where viable.
Okay, I just noticed that. I didn't know if there was a reason that the Appropriations Committee went back a year.
This bill is one of the hardest bills I worked on this year, and it's only 5 pages long.
Well, you did a good job.
Yeah.
So
So Irene.
Yeah, I don't know if this is anything new, but I would like to see a two-tiered program maybe where you check a box, like due to this application process or something. And then those would be grants up to 15,000, and then maybe that would encourage the big dogs to check yeah, I'm a perennial applicant, and they go for the 30,000 or whatever the other tier is. And that way it's sort of all under one umbrella, and your staff, even though they're juggling more things, can have one person look at the small ones and one person look at the big ones, and I don't know, maybe somehow find an efficiency there, but also an efficiency for the farmers.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't, as a farmer, I've filled out one grant application in my life and never again. Because it does take so many hours to do the homework and make sure that your answer is right. You show it to all your friends, we're like, no, don't answer it that way. If you could have the farmers also, pick so that they're not trying to apply to both. Because I think that, overachieving, I'd be like, oh, I want to apply to both, and then I'd really be hating everybody, including myself for committing to doing both, but feeling like I had to do both because I might not win the low one, but I might win the high one. And so I think that streamlining might be
I have
helpful.
applied before, and generally the person you're working with said, you've got a better chance over here than here, and they usually scoot you through the process.
Yeah, that's because you're a senator.
It's not,
No,
has
we
nothing
can't.
to do with.
I never had help. I was just applying blind. So I didn't think that's route. That was smart.
To be honest about it. You couldn't win a grant.
You probably did actually. Did you have help?
How you go, I'm saying. I mean, Brian, you gotten a grant for your chicken ranch?
This is the 5 chickens?
Yeah, this is for 5
You
chickens.
need a new category.
Yeah, I got one last year, but it wasn't huge. It was only about.
I think you've got a new turkey to join your flock.
Is that for little sweaters for them?
Oh.
Have a brand.
So, why don't, Michael, you and Abby, we try to figure out that sign up date so that we don't run into the Christmas from the end of the year. Get that moved back, I think, wouldn't the committee like to see, get this streamlined so it might be still part of the working lands, but it would be in a separate category?
Do you,
Not a fit in the same review process with its own.
do you want me to draft it as session law, kind of as part of maybe the appropriations bill or as part of statute?
Well, I don't know if we should,
It wouldn't be a pilot if you do it the appropriations way. It would just assume to know, you do it all the time. To say, the money appropriated to the agency fiscal year 24, $350,000 shall be used by the Working Lands Board to provide grants to small farmers. You define what a small farmer is, and then that's really it.
the house is basically a pretty new chair, new vice chair, new committee, a lot of new committee. And I really don't know if it would be right to do in there, Bill. I wouldn't feel good about not doing H205. When it gets down to approach,
We're gonna strip
it
out.
might, it'll go there anyways. Then you do that conversion. But just to have good feelings with our buddies from the other chamber,
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
I just assume do their bill with a little tweaking, and it'll get to approach, and then we would
Sure.
maybe load it right into.
So what I think I would do then is, instead of creating a new subchapter with this new program, I would probably put it under the Working Lands chapter. And I'd take out things like the application period and the waiting. And then it would, but keep the diversification and transition keep the definition of farm products, keep the definition of small farm.
I think, I mean, what do you guys?
Yeah,
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the lack of money here. I mean, we've talked about how important it is to help people transition, especially out of dairy. And, you know, they put in $500,000 and now it's down to 350, and I'm just concerned that 350 isn't enough.
I think if you're moving out of the dairy, to think that 15,000 is gonna amount to much it's not gonna amount to anything. Maybe if you are, doing something else, but this is not where, a dairy farm is gonna go.
You could buy you a couple of cows though, a couple of beef cattle.
Oh, yeah, 15 grand, you'd get 10 or 12 beavers, wouldn't you? There must be no more than that, a heifer, beef.
You probably get maybe 11.
Yeah. Well, that'd be a start. And, you know, and you raise them and get them bred.
No, I'm not saying it, but, you know, by the time you talk about fencing, you talk about all of that sort of stuff, this is not gonna be where somebody coming out of dairy is gonna go. This is gonna be
Start up.
for other things. Maybe you've got land that was your dairy farm that you wanna do. I don't know much about Christmas trees, but maybe 50 would help you start something. I don't know.
Well, you can take a meadow and plant Christmas trees in it, get started in the tree business.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but that's,
I mean, Senator Westman, if I might, I mean, I think this is where this is part of a very complex puzzle of resources that's
why it
needed
needs to
for
work with
agriculture.
others.
And again, you didn't ask me to come in here to talk about it, but this is where, in our opinion, the $10 million that was originally designed in the governor's recommend for a big infrastructure investment in meat, maple, and produce was designed to be a real transition opportunity for the dairy industry and for other businesses. And when we have an appropriation for working lands that's $4 million, which was again what was in the governor's recommend, that's a big chunk of money in that program that receives 10 million in requests every year, where bigger investments up to $250,000 could do some of those, you know, bigger transitions. But on the other hand, I think this is a part of the puzzle of like, how do we put resources that support small farms? But we also need the bigger resources to be able to have the impact that we actually need in protection of
Yeah,
the
we
land. that
gotta
need to
fight
do.
on our hands over that.
I know.
That's already cut in half. Went down to 5 million.
Yeah, the 10 million's down to 5 and working lands is down to 1.
Yeah, and so we got a dog fight there and
But that's another reason I think the whole application process for this needs to fit in the
Needs to
future
be
of-
simple. I agree.
It needs to be simple, but it needs to fit with all the other stuff that we're working out. And because you can't, to separate it out, just doesn't make sense to me.
so
We agree.
we'll try to get something. Tuesday is pretty, Tuesday kind of gone,
Tuesday's gone, Wednesday's,
maybe Wednesday.
Wednesdays.
We'll keep working on this bill.
They put a lot of work. in.
I know they
What
did.
the
They
hell?
put a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Time, a lot of
yeah, I
ideas.
don't
It's a
wanna-
great idea.
Why didn't they have you in to testify?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it was just that schedules didn't align. Yeah, that's my guess. I mean,
Like I
certainly,
said, they're bringing new one.
yeah.
I understand that, but it's just so foreign to me that you don't, when somebody's gotta do this work, so wouldn't you talk to?
Well, they had-
When you had people working for you, did you talk with them?
I did the talking, they did the listening.
Always on everything.
Well,
Did you ever get any feedback from them?
sometimes. I couldn't even repeat what I can, the feedback didn't hear. No, I mean, there's a learning curve
Yes,
here,
there
and,
is.
and the bulk of that committee is on that curve, and, you know, all the rank and file have been there for years, pretty well gone, so, I mean, they're doing their thing the best way they know how, and,
Yeah.
and I think it's up to us to try to guide them along and be as polite about it as possible, but get the job done in a correct way. And
I would also say that they're not committed to doing things the way that they've been done in the past.
yeah, I mean, it's,
They're looking to do it what they think is the right way.
yeah, I mean, and that's what happened. Probably they said the same thing
When you started.
when I started. We used to, when I first started, of course, we had windows like this. And there was 11 of us in there, plus well, we didn't have a staff person. We didn't even have a Linda. The clerk did the clerk work.
Oh.
Wow.
But it would be so blue with cigar pipe and cigarette smoke that you'd have to keep the top window open and hope the heck it went out, but you'd get home at night and you'd stink cigarette smoke and tobacco, right? It was, yeah, it was a lot different when.
And you had to dodge Ruth's cane,
Oh, yeah.
because that thing could, freely fly sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good to see you.
Yeah,
You too.
and,
See you again, I hope.
well,